Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into something we all struggle with, and we're going to demystify exactly why our minds constantly race, and more importantly, how you can finally find some peace. If you've ever felt like your brain is running a marathon that you definitely didn't sign up for, well, you're in the exact right place. We're going to completely unpack the mechanics of the overactive mind.
To start, let's talk about this incredibly familiar feeling. Have you ever been kept awake at 2 a.m., just staring at the ceiling, absolutely agonizing over a casual conversation you had hours or maybe even years ago? You're playing back the tone of your voice, visualizing the exact look on their face, and asking yourself if you completely messed up a totally simple interaction. Or, maybe your brain freezes up in a slightly different way. It hits you with this paralyzing question right before you take a big risk, like asking for a promotion at work or just trying a new hobby. Out of nowhere, a massive cascade of catastrophic what-ifs just floods your system, basically convincing you that disaster is the only possible outcome. It is just that universal, deeply exhausting experience of lying in the dark, basically held hostage by your own racing thoughts. Your body is utterly exhausted, you're craving rest, but your mind is wide awake, frantically running through a chaotic checklist of literally everything you've ever done wrong and everything that could potentially go wrong tomorrow. It's incredibly isolating in the moment.
But here is the big takeaway, our core thesis for today. Your overthinking is actually a misguided survival mechanism. It's not a personal flaw. I really want you to absorb that. You are not broken. You don't have a defective mind. You actually have a highly vigilant, wildly overprotective brain that is just working overtime to keep you safe from perceived threats.
So let's get into section 1, the anatomy of overthinking. We're going to look under the hood of the mind. Now, there is a massive, distinct separation here between productive problem solving and the deeply unhelpful loop of rumination. Problem solving moves forward, right? It actively seeks an answer. Rumination, on the other hand, is kind of like sitting in a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, sure, but it doesn't get you absolutely anywhere. You're just spinning your wheels, analyzing a problem over and over without ever actually stepping toward a solution.
And this leads us to what I like to call the intelligence paradox. It's fascinating because it reveals how your brain's capacity to imagine highly complex futures directly fuels its capacity to invent complex anxieties. The exact same vivid imagination that you need to architect a bridge, write a novel, or plan a business strategy is the very same tool your brain uses to construct hyper-realistic, absolute worst-case scenarios. Your overthinking is actually just a symptom of a highly capable mind, but it's pointed in the wrong direction.
Ultimately, every single exhausting loop in your head traces back to one single primal biological imperative, and that is survival. Our ancient ancestors didn't survive by being chill and relaxed. They survived by constantly scanning the horizon for predators. Your brain actually evolved to prioritize negative information because back then, missing a negative cue literally meant death. Today, that predator might just be an unread email or an awkward social encounter, but your brain reacts with the exact same life or death intensity.
Moving on to section 2, the fear and anxiety trap. Let's talk about the brain's false alarms. It's really wild how your brain's alarm system completely overrides logic during a spiral. When you are stuck in overthinking mode, your amygdala, which is the brain's fear center, is spiking. It is just pumping out stress hormones. Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex, the part that is responsible for logic and rational decision-making, gets actively suppressed. You literally cannot logic your way out of this state because the logical part of your brain has been temporarily powered down by fear. And that dynamic creates the deeply frustrating reality of analysis paralysis. We end up burning a staggering 80% of our mental fuel just worrying about a decision, which leaves a measly 20% for actually executing it. Think about how incredibly inefficient that is. By the time you finally decide what you're going to do, you are way too exhausted to actually do it well. You've run a mental marathon before taking a single physical step.
Which brings us to section 3, why we get stuck, the psychology of negative loops.
The reason it's so hard to stop is neuroplasticity. Think of a sled carving a track in fresh snow as it goes down a hill. That first time, the path is pretty shallow, but every single time the sled goes down that exact same path, the groove gets deeper and deeper, making it way harder to steer anywhere else. Your neural pathways do the exact same thing with negative thoughts. The more you overthink, the physically easier it becomes for your brain to slip right back into that exact same anxious groove. You are quite literally wiring your brain to worry.
Section 4, the cost to happiness and the toll of analysis paralysis.
There is a harsh, brutal inverse relationship between overanalyzing a choice and actually feeling satisfied with the outcome. When we overthink, our decision speed bottoms out and our stress just skyrockets. But the really sad part is that overall satisfaction ends up being incredibly low. Why is that? Because when you overthink, you imagine all these potential perfect outcomes, which creates an impossible standard. So even when you end up making a genuinely good choice, your brain highlights how it falls short of that imaginary perfection, completely robbing you of any actual joy.
Finally, Section 5, Breaking the Cycle. Here is some practical relief for a busy mind.
You can actually use these exact steps as an authoritative pattern interrupt the second your mind starts spinning. First, label it. Just tell yourself, okay, I am ruminating. That simple act reactivates that logical prefrontal cortex we talked about earlier. Second, move your body. Stand up, walk into another room, go splash your face with cold water. You have to break the physical context of the worry. And third, give yourself a strict time limit for making decisions. Parkinson's law states that work expands to fill the time allotted, right? Well, worry does the exact same thing.
Let's map this out into a super practical timeline for that critical first minute when you need to reclaim your focus. At 0 seconds, you just notice the loop. Don't judge yourself for it, just objectively observe it. By second 5, you are physically up and moving around. By second 60, you are actively grounding yourself, feeling the texture of the shirt you're wearing, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, smelling your coffee. You are literally forcing your brain out of the imagined future and violently anchoring it right here in the present physical reality. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to carry with you as you practice quieting that brilliant, overprotective brain of yours. What if the solution isn't about figuring everything out? What if real freedom is simply accepting that you don't need to know the answer right this second? The next time you find yourself spiraling at 2 a.m., I want you to ask yourself, am I actually trying to solve a problem? Or is my brain just trying to protect me from a threat that isn't even there? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I challenge you to step